going to really see the villain in me come out now. I'm going to go super villain as opposed to just like somebody who's got a white cat in a spinny chair and hasn't really figured out how to use it yet.
Hello, 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 and welcome to Well Shit. It really is that simple. I'm Claire.
And I'm Serena. On this podcast, we help you to understand about your 12 universal needs, why they are currently not being well met,
how to meet them in ways that work for you, and how to consistently do so in quick, easy, and simple ways that fit seamlessly into your life.
We'll also help you to understand how doing so will have a positive ripple effect in literally every area of your life.
If you like what you hear, sign up for more support with meeting your needs with your weekly Universal Needs Notes at theuniversalneeds.com.
And enjoy the show.
Hello, hello, hello.
Hey, everyone.
So today, Serena and I are in our villain era. There's context to this. I mean, obviously what we're going to be talking about today, but if you haven't picked up on it by now, from listening to the podcast for all this time, Serena and I both have favorite colors. My favorite color is purple. Serena's favorite color is green. And was it maybe like a few weeks ago? I think I sent you a video. I came across a video that basically explained how in like cartoons and like TV shows and like comic books and that sort of thing, that the color combination for villains is green and purple. And like, even if you go back and you look at some of the villains, like from history, that a lot of them do have green and purple. And there's a reason for this, that the part of the reason is that the heroes had taken the like primary color palette. So most heroes are kind of red, blue, and yellow. And so when it came to the villains, they're kind of distinguishing the villains from the heroes. Purple and green were like two of the prominent colors that were left over. So I sent that to Serena. I was like, oh look, we're villains when we combine, because I'm purple and she's green. And so we just sat down to record this episode. And every time we start an episode, we always like to I don't like to like just dive straight into content. Like we like to have like a little bit of a like ease into and talk about maybe things that have been going on. And I was like, oh, we can talk like, and the words hadn't left my mouth as to what I was planning on saying in the intro. And literally Serena's like, oh, we should have worn purple and green because we were both wearing different colors. And I was like, I want to go change. And she's like, no, but yes. So, and the funny thing is that if you've been watching for a while now, you know, Serena and I often wear the same color. Apparently when we wear different colors, we wear the same shirt, because literally we are wearing the exact same shirt, just in purple and green. This is the life of having interconnected brains.
Villain comes naturally to us. What can I say?
Absolutely, yeah. We're definitely. I mean, I think though, like a lot of people in our age of life are entering what people perceive as being their villain era, just because there are less fucks to give and more focus on ourselves and our needs and boundaries and things that other people don't necessarily like. And it's much easier to paint someone a villain than actually just accept that they're actually doing the right thing for themselves.
Right.
We will get into all of this though, because today we're talking about like, no matter how good of a person you are, you're going to be the asshole in someone's story or the villain in someone's story. And I don't think anybody knows this as well as Serena and I know this. Like, we have had a lot of experience of this over the years. Yeah, in lots of different guises. But a lot of it is just because we have reached that point in our lives, because our needs are well met. We don't need to maintain relationships that aren't supporting us anymore, and who maybe that are toxic or that are just compromising our needs. And I'm giggling at.
We're villain super villains that do no harm because of interconnectedness.
Right. We need powered supervillains that are interconnected. Yeah. It's so funny because like, if you like, if you haven't listened to the last episode on interconnectedness, I really recommend you go and listen to that before you listen to this one, because there's a lot in there that's going to be kind of relevant to what we're talking about. And the irony is like, yeah, we're interconnectedness kind of first and foremost. And we're self first and interconnectedness first and foremost. Like, we're not going to be prioritizing what's good for everybody else at our detriment. And that's what we've both done for a lot of our lives. It's what a lot of people do, because we get into this kind of conditioning that we have from society, which is like, it's better to be selfless than selfish. Well, if you haven't yet listened to the self first episode, go listen to that, because there's a better option than, because neither of those options are good, like literally neither of them. The better option is self first. And if you don't know what self first is taking care of your own needs, prioritizing and meeting your own needs at the minimum in ways that do not negatively impact other people, and sometimes in ways that might benefit other people and their needs as well. And so I think that really, like, we've just come into this time in our lives, which is like, if you don't like me because I'm doing what is the right thing for me by setting boundaries, if you don't like me because I'm doing the right thing by somebody else, by saying, hey, this thing that you did to them is not okay, I'm good with that. Like, I don't like, I don't need everybody to like. There was a point in my life where, because my needs weren't met, I felt like I needed everyone to like me, because I was trying to use the other people liking me as a way of getting my needs met. And now my needs are met without the need for that. I'm like, there are some people I'm happy that they don't like me, because I think if they liked me, it would be an endorsement of a way of being that's really not a good idea, that I'm not in alignment with. It doesn't align with my values. So if you think I'm doing okay, I feel like I would be doing something wrong. So I'm actually okay with being the asshole, the villain, whatever it is in several people's stories. I don't set out to be that, but I definitely am not averse to that. Let's put it that way.
It's amazing how once your needs are met, that, like, I mean, because I used to be the same way. I'd be like, oh no, how do I make this right? I will do anything. I will compromise myself to make this right. And now I'm like, and that makes me more of a villain. Like, the fact that I'm not like, oh my God, I need to meet your needs, or like there's not an interaction with this, with people like there used to be. It's like, oh, she's a villain and a bitch.
Right.
Okay. Like,
yeah.
Fine.
And the thing about it is, like, it's really important. Like, if you haven't listened to our episode on the harm dynamic yet, I recommend going and listening to, I mean, in fact, if you haven't listened to the shapes, go listen to the shapes. Like, and I mean, there's a lot of content in there, but it's really good stuff. And it's really helpful for kind of being able to pull apart these kind of dynamics and see what's really going on. If you have listened to the episode on the harm dynamic, you'll know that there is a harmer, like an objective harmer role. We do not want to be in that role. If you're an objective harmer, you are negatively impacting somebody else's needs, or the needs ecosystem, or both, or multiple people's needs. And it's really important to recognize that it's okay that gets called out as harm. You want to call it an asshole, you want to call it a villain, you can label that anything you want, but there is harm being done in that situation, and it's okay to call that out. And it's not okay to justify or give excuses why that behavior is all right, because it's not. Like, that being in the harmer role is not okay, and it is something that, and it definitely doesn't take into consider interconnectedness that we talked about in the last episode. So it's really important to recognize, people in harmer roles, I would say, are enacting asshole behavior because of the work that we do, and especially the parts of the work that I do. I tend to try to separate identity and behavior. So, like, there's a difference between somebody being an asshole and somebody who is behaving like an asshole. I think it's much better to kind of deal at the behavior level, generally speaking. And I can understand someone labeling somebody an asshole if they're harming somebody else. Like, I can understand that. But it's really important to recognize there is a difference between doing harm and just not doing what somebody else wants you to do. Or there's a difference between doing harm and not meeting somebody else's needs that were never your responsibility in the first place. We talked about that in the last episode. We've got another episode specifically on that. We'll put the link in the show notes. So it's important to recognize that, we don't want to be in the harmer role. Definitely not. But it's really important to recognize where we're in the harmer role and where somebody else is perceiving us as being in the persecutor approach from the drama triangle, because they're positioning themselves in the victim approach, because they're looking at what we're doing and they're putting a meaning on it that's not really what's going on. They're saying, okay, well, you're negatively impacting me because you're not doing this thing that once met my needs. And they're acting like the victim in that situation. And they're perceiving us as the person who is negatively impacting them, when in actual fact, it was never our job to meet those needs in the first place. We're just choosing not to do that anymore. And that's not actually affecting them. What's affecting them is their expectation and sense of entitlement to have us do that thing for them. And that's what's causing the feelings that they're having. But rather than looking at that and going, oh yeah, my bad, I should never have expected you to do that in the first place, they're going, man, you're the problem, you're an asshole, you're me. And in doing that, they're dropping into the drama triangle. Now, as we've talked about in the shapes episodes, it's really important that we don't drop into the drama triangle with them. So we don't want to jump into the rescue position. We don't want to engage with the persecutor approach. We don't want to drop into the harmer approach from the harm dynamic. It's really important that we stay in the empowerment ecosystem in creator approach. But it's important, and one of the things that will allow us to do that is to stay aware of interconnectedness and recognize that we are meeting our needs. We're focused on meeting our needs in the minimum in ways that are not going to negatively impact somebody else's needs, and recognizing the difference between negatively impacting somebody else's needs and just not doing what somebody else wants you to do, because those are two different things. Like there's so much muddying of the waters around this, because people are like, oh, well, you're doing this thing and it's negatively impacting me. No, honey, that was never my job in the first place. You don't get to blame me because you're not getting this thing done for you that I should never have been doing to start with. That's your job. If you're not going to do your job, that's fine, but don't blame me for not doing it for you, sort of thing. Mm-hmm. And it's important to recognize that if we are doing harm, and if we're doing harm due to interconnectedness, it's going to negatively impact our needs. The more we are aware of the fact that we're doing harm, the more we don't care about the fact that we're doing harm, the greater the impact to our of the negative impact to our needs. And that's interesting. Like, we didn't actually talk about that in the last episode on interconnectedness. I mean, it was already an hour and a half long, so I'm glad that we didn't go down this rabbit hole. I'm glad it's coming up right now. Is that when it comes to interconnectedness, if we negatively impact somebody else, it's going to negatively impact our needs, whether we're aware of it or not. If we are aware of the fact that we're doing it and we are still not doing it, it's going to impact our needs even more, because the only way that we can be okay with doing that is because we are even more disconnected from their humanity, which means we're even more disconnected from our humanity, which means it's affecting us and negatively impacting our needs even more. If we are intentionally doing it, it's going to impact even more. If we're not caring about it, depending on the level of intention, the level of awareness, the level of care that we have about the fact that we're doing this, the greater the negative impact to our needs. But even if we're not aware of it, we're still going to have a negative impact to our needs, even if we're aware of it or not. Does that make sense?
It does.
So the thing about it is that even if you are doing everything you can to operate with a mindfulness of interconnectedness, if you are doing things that are not negatively impacting somebody else's needs, there is a possibility, and in some respects, I could say a probability, given our current social dynamics that we have going on, that even if you are doing the right thing, even if you are not doing harm to somebody else, the level of compromise to people's needs, just generally in our culture, the extent to which our needs are unmet in our culture, and the extent to which there's a lot of therapized language that's being thrown about, which most people don't know really what it means, that they're using it to try and justify what's going on or to blame other people for what's going on. But also, as we talked about in the last episode, because so many of us haven't actually matured when it comes to meeting our needs, we haven't moved from that we're dependent on somebody else for getting our needs met to now being responsible for meeting our own needs, means we're still walking around with this sense of expectation and entitlement to the world around us meeting our needs for us. And if that doesn't happen, we feel harmed in some way, we feel wronged in some way, when in reality, that person isn't harming us in any way, shape or form. They're just not doing the thing that we expected them to do. But in doing that, that's how we very often get positioned as the asshole. Like, that's how we get positioned as the villain. It's like, well, you didn't do this, therefore you're to blame. Was that my job? No, from an objective standpoint. But from the individual standpoint, a lot of the time they're like, well, yeah, that's part of friendship, or that's part of being in a relationship, or that's what makes a good family member, or that's what makes a good colleague. They have these sets of expectations that they have created that if you don't meet, they interpret as you doing harm to them, when in reality, that's not actually the case.
Well, like you said in the last episode, you have those instances where you were doing something and then you stopped doing something that wasn't your responsibility. And that feels like even like more so for many people, like the not the person removing themselves, but the person being quote unquote harmed by your actions.
Well, the person who's not having their needs met, let's take the word harm out of that scenario, because they're not being harmed. Let's the person who is just not having their needs met by you choosing to do that. Now, it's really important to say that if your needs are well met and you are doing what you can to operate with interconnectedness, like in the context of self first, yes, we need to make sure we're doing that as well, and you are genuinely not doing harm, your actions are being interpreted through somebody else's unmet needs, because that's where it's coming from. It's normally their unmet needs that are actually doing the talking in this situation, because you're not doing what they want you to do, then it doesn't actually affect you as much because your needs are already well met. It's the fact that your needs are met that means that choosing to step out of this, but still being perceived this way, doesn't actually have the same impact to you as if your needs are unmet and you're perceived this way. Because in reality, the reason that this perception affects us, like being seen this way affects us, is normally because subconsciously we look at this and go, there's a part of our subconscious goes, oh shit, how's this going to affect our needs? Like they perceive it that like, oh, being seen as the bad guy, being seen as the arsehole, being seen as the villain is going to negatively impact our needs. And so if our needs are already unmet, that fear becomes amplified because they're already unmet. They're going to get even more. There's a fear they're going to become even more unmet. If your needs are already well met and you know how to meet them for yourself, even if there is a compromise to your needs, even if there is somewhat of an impact, the impact is not going to affect us as much because it's not landing on already unmet needs. Like our needs are met and okay, they might drop a little bit. But they're not going to kind of go into that negative space of being unmet. And also, even if they do get negatively impacted and they drop a little bit, we know how to make up that deficit and go, oh, okay, our value needs been taken a hit. Okay, let's do this to meet our value. Oh, look, it's back up to the top again. And so that's the reason that there's been this change in Serena and I in terms of how this affects us now versus how this used to affect us 20 years ago. Because if I was painted as the villain 20 years ago, 20 years ago, I was kind of mid-20s. I mean, maybe going a little bit more than that. My brain wasn't fully developed yet. If we're going back to kind of late teens, early 20s, and everything like hormones raging, things are like, everything's like kind of chaotic. But because my needs were so unmet, any potential risk to them became this huge thing. Mm-hmm. And it kind of dominated my experience, my existence. Like I would be like, all I could think of is like, what can I do to change this? What can I do to solve this? And the truth of the matter is, there's really not a lot you can do about it other than compromising your needs to meet the other person's needs, which is not going to support you either if you know how to meet your own needs. But if you don't, you can very easily kind of get caught in that logic of like, oh God, I've got to meet their needs because if I don't meet their needs, they're not going to meet my needs and I don't have any other way of doing it.
There is another option for which way your younger self villain could go. And I'm saying this in general, not like specifically to you or to me. My villain would go to fight, be like, oh, you want to see villain? I'll
Double
fucking
down.
show you villain. Like, and it could go from something that it actually where I wasn't the villain and I actually step into that role and I'm like, got my cape, got my mask, fucker. Let's do this thing.
Let's go.
Like, I mean, it really it can pull you into the space. What I wanted to comment on though is Claire had mentioned, did you have something?
No, I was going to, but I don't want you to lose your thoughts. So you go ahead and I'll tack on the end.
When Claire was mentioning how sometimes like you might get negatively impacted by somebody thinking you're the villain. Claire and I have had our names dragged through the mud by some people who villainized us when it wasn't warranted in any way whatsoever. And it's like, yeah, that impacted us as we were hearing stories get back to us about what we said or what we did or where our intentions are at. And luckily we had each other to talk through this, you know, together with. And
also
there was a point.
Can you believe this? This is fucking ridiculous. Like there was a lot of laughter that went on with that as well of like, okay, like this is bizarre, but cool.
And processing the anger and like all the other emotions that were coming up with it. But it really was pretty silly. And then we'd hear, oh, well, you know, this person has now told this person and this person thinks that. And if it's based on complete fallacy, because our needs are well met, we're like, oh, I guess I know where that person stands now. Like, all right, did that one for you. Like you almost start flipping it and looking at the positives of, you know, like, where is this benefiting me? Okay, I actually found out that this person I thought was also a friend isn't as much of a friend or is easily convinced that's somebody I have to be aware of.
Right. And just kind of going back to the whole kind of doubling down as the villain thing, like a lot of the time, like the reason for that is that there's this belief and perception. And this is very true also around like when you're around your kind of teenage and early 20s. Again, when we're not fully developed and there's lots of hormones and all that sort of stuff. And there's this perception that that's the only way I can like, and again, subconsciously, like it's not the conscious thought, that's the only way I can get my needs met. Like, I'm like, okay, if you want to see villain, I'm going to go to, I'm going to use this anger to fuel what I'm going to do. And I'm going to see myself as more powerful than you because I'm going to outplay you with this power game, or I'm going to see myself as more valuable than you because I really am the villain now. I've gone from like person in a lab who's slightly pissed off to I've gone through my villain transformation. All the radioactive stuff has entered my body and you're going to see me Hulk out now. I mean, Hulk out's not probably a good example because I don't think Hulk's actually a villain. But anyway, like that's not hero, So, but you know what I mean? Like you're going to really see the villain in me come out now. I'm going to go super villain as opposed to just like somebody who's got a white cat in a spinny chair and hasn't really figured out how to use it yet. So it's like, I think that this is that's why that happens. It's like, they don't see another route out. And so the best way out is like, if you're going to say this about me, then, and I can't convince you or anybody else that that's untrue, I'm going to use that as a way of trying to get my needs met. So it's like, and because of the interconnectedness, because we then actually go into that place of harming others, then we end up like having our needs compromised as well. Like it's interesting, actually, there's I talked about it on the previous episode, that there are lots of situations in the Married at First Sight Australia that I'm watching right now that is, there's a lot of vitriol and nasty behavior, especially between the women, that's going on. And the interesting thing is that there are 4 women who are really problematic in this TV show. I mean, there aren't that many women in the whole thing. So, I mean, it's a good portion of them. 2 of them, I don't know enough about their backstory to kind of ascertain where this has come from, like figure out like from a needs perspective what's going on. 2 of them, one was incredibly badly bullied at school, and the other one has gone on a significant weight loss journey and was significantly bullied at school, didn't see themselves as good enough, didn't see themselves as worthy. And what they're doing is they're taking that, this is where I can see that their unmet needs, they're now taking that and being like, okay, now I'm going to make sure my needs are getting met get met because I'm going to be the asshole to somebody else. Because if I'm more of an asshole than anyone else can be, like, I'm going to out asshole everybody else. So they can't affect me because I'm affecting them. And there's like a couple of them. And it's interesting because there's these two particular people I'm thinking of. They're both very strategic, very manipulative, and they're both so insecure. One of them, it's obvious that she's insecure and she tries to convince herself that she's not. The other one, it's not so obvious that she's insecure. I mean, I can see it's like pouring out of her. But she's acting like she's the most superior in every possible way. And I'm like, oh, honey, you're so insecure. And both of them are trying to be the biggest, baddest asshole in the space so that they don't end up in the firing line of somebody else taking on that role. So a lot of this is all like unmet needs. Like, it's the unmet needs that are driving the behavior. But when you then drive that behavior, you then become the harmer, which means that through interconnectedness, it compromises your needs even more. So you feel less secure. So you're going to do more of this stuff. And this is what I can see. Like, it creates these monsters where it's like they're deliberately trying to harm other people so that they don't get harmed, but they harm themselves by doing that because of the interconnectedness, which means then they try and do more. It's just like, you watch it and it's like, oh, wow. That's, not helpful
for anybody.
None of this is a good idea. So a lot of the time, there's lots of times where we get made into arseholes or perceived as arseholes in other people's situations. And there's a couple of like big examples of this. Sometimes it's because other people have an unwillingness to communicate because to communicate would be uncomfortable. Like, it's like, I mean, I can't tell you the number of times that there's been a couple of situations where people are like, oh, so what happened with so-and-so? And I'm like, literally nothing. Like, literally, people think that the relationship, the friendship ended because there was this big showdown or what have you. And I'm like, no, literally nothing. As in, like, there might have been we need to talk about something. And that person just ghosted. And it's like, oh, you don't want to talk because talking's uncomfortable. So they prioritize their short-term comfort, but create long-term conflict. And again, we did an episode on this relatively recently. We'll drop a link to it in the show notes. Because their needs are unmet and they realize that they might have some accountability or responsibility in the situation, which they don't want to face. And so they're trying to protect their unmet needs because they think to name and own where they've made mistakes would compromise them. Well, in actual fact, it's the opposite. If you name and own your mistakes and you make them right, it resolves those unmet needs. But that's beside the point. And they don't want to face that because they think facing that will make things worse for them. And so they don't talk about it. And then because they haven't talked about it, it becomes this huge, big issue. And they need somebody to blame for this huge, big issue. And they don't want to blame themselves. So it's like, them, they did it. What did they do? They wanted to talk to me, damn it. Okay. How heinous. Like how could, Claire, how could you wanting to have a conversation with somebody? What were you thinking? I'm like, okay. But it's so common. Like, this happens so frequently. And like, there's another example where, like, the other thing that tends to come up a lot around this is that a lot of times it's kind of it's kind of an element of what we just talked about. But a lot of times people need a villain to blame. So they have a focal point for the feelings that they have that's outside of themselves. They want somebody else to blame for what they're feeling, rather than checking in. Hold on a second. Is my behavior or are my expectations the cause of what I'm feeling? That requires some kind of reflection. It requires some sort of effort, it requires some sort of inner work, which most people are allergic to. Not really allergic to, but like, most people would do anything to avoid actually doing their inner work, which is heartbreaking to me, because when you do that, that's how you heal and how you become more fulfilled and happier. And anyway, that to one side. So they want this external thing that they can, and especially because we all need to see ourselves as good people. that's part of like our value need, is seeing ourselves as a good person. The problem is that not everybody acts like a good person, but they don't want to see themselves as anything other than a good person. So they resist seeing the behavior that doesn't align with being a good person. So they're like, well, ignore that. But they're mean because they wanted to talk to me and that made me upset. And it's like, the mental gymnastics that goes on in these situations is like mind blowing. But this is what we mean about our brains are great at convincing ourselves of things that are convenient for our needs, or sometimes not convenient for our needs, but they seem to be like, it'll convince us of so many things that are completely untrue because it's quote unquote easier than actually doing the work and actually owning and naming and saying, okay, I fucked up. Like, I think that's one of the things that a lot of the cause of these sorts of things is somebody not being willing to say I fucked up, because they think that by saying I fucked up, they are negative, that it's compromising their personal power need, because then the other person has power over you. It's compromising your value need. There's something wrong with me because I fucked up. There's like, it's going to compromise our love and connection need because their connection with other people. It's like, and the opposite is true. Like, it's heartbreaking because you see these people who are compromising their needs so much to try to protect their needs by making somebody else responsible for the situation that they've created, even when the other person actually hasn't done anything wrong. And I remember there was like one situation where we had a scenario like this, and somebody was saying to the other person, like, it's Claire. Like, if you can talk to anyone about this, she's the one you could talk to about this. She would have conversation about this so easy. Like, she would help you through it. She would support you with it. She'd be willing to talk about it. She would own wherever like the stuff is that she's done that's contributed to it. Like, if anyone's going to make that conversation easy, it's Claire, as long as you step into the conversation. But even in that situation, some people still aren't willing to do that. And it's like, if I see effort from somebody, bet your ass I'll be there by your side. Like, okay, I can see you're trying. That's all I need. I need to see effort and I need to see action. If I see effort and action, okay, I will willingly help you through this, even if I'm the one that's been compromised in the process. But even in that situation, some people are so unwilling to own their mistakes. And that then causes somebody else to be placed in the villain. Like, it's funny. I saw a video on TikTok the other day. It might have even been yesterday. It was a therapist. And this therapist was like, I'm happy to be the villain. Like, if somebody else is having feelings about you setting boundaries, or about you doing this, or about you doing that, you prioritizing your needs. I mean, she didn't say prioritizing your needs because that's our language, obviously. And the people in your life need someone to blame me. I'm happy to take that because they want someone to blame for how they're feeling. And the truth of the matter is they do want someone to blame for how they're feeling. The person to blame normally 9 times out of 10 is them.
It's themselves.
But they don't really want to see that or accept that or own it. So sometimes giving them like an outside source can be helpful. I mean, and if you're listening and you need someone to blame us. We'll happily take the blame for that. Like, we'll be the source. If they need someone to blame for you suddenly doing things differently. I've been listening to these 2 girls. Oh my goodness. Like they were the ones who taught me about this. Like, make it us. Like, we're cool with that. Our needs are met. We don't need people to like us. We're happy to be the villains. Like, we're even going to wear our villain colors. So
I'll put on a mask for you. I'd like,
yeah. It's so sad. It's so sad. And like, sometimes like it can be how our, like, another example of how this shows up is how our setting of boundaries can be interpreted. Like, your boundaries don't need to be justified or explained unless you want to. And it's about remembering that boundary is what is and what is not okay with us, and what we do to maintain what is and what is not okay with us. It's something that you put in place to ensure your needs don't get negatively impacted. And one of the components is that the choices or actions you will take to ensure your needs don't get negatively impacted. So, for example, walking away, ending a conversation, for example. But sometimes people perceive that boundary as a punishment. or as an attack. Because if you have compromised your boundaries over and over again to be there for somebody else, to support somebody else, and then all of a sudden you put that boundary up, they can go, oh my God, how could you do this to me? Well, you're not doing it to them. You're doing it for yourself. And actually, we'll put a link to the show notes in the episode about for the episode where we talk about this. Boundaries help you get closer to people. They actually support relationships. They're the things that allow you to get as close as possible to each other without like stepping over and compromising the other person and what they've got going on. But if people don't understand that, and all that happens is their needs have gone from being somewhat met to being less well met, internally they go, well, they were being somewhat well met, and now they're being less well met, and you're the person that has caused that shift. Therefore, you must be in the wrong. You must be the villain. You must be to blame. And all of a sudden, you're wearing purple and green and didn't even realize why. Like it's kind of ridiculous. And it's really important when we talk about boundaries to say there is a difference between setting a boundary and either withdrawing or stonewalling or fortressing, which are all like persecution, harm behavior dynamics, as a way of trying to get your needs met, but often at the expense of the relationship or at the expense of the other person's need, or to punish the other person for meeting our needs. That's a very different thing. And sometimes people can have a hard time understanding the difference between that. There's a difference between this conversation isn't good for me. I need to draw this to a close. Like, let's take another couple of minutes to finish the conversation, but this isn't good for me right now. And if it doesn't finish within the next couple of minutes, I'm going to have to end the conversation myself and leave. And walking out in the middle of a conversation and not communicating around it and not telling the other, like, and obviously we're talking about this in, like, if you're in a relationship with somebody, like, this is not necessarily with a stranger on the street, when walking away is perfectly viable option because you don't owe them anything because you're not in a relationship with them. But like in that situation, there is a difference between I need to take some time to kind of process what's going on so that I can then have a meaningful conversation with you about this. And I'm ignoring you and I'm not going to talk to you for the next 2 days because I'm punishing you for not doing what I want you to do. Like there's different, and this is the reason that, I mean, one of the reasons that nuance is my favorite word when it comes to needs, because it's really important for you to understand the difference between the two, because the actions sometimes can look very, very similar, but it's also the intention. Like, it's about recognizing that we're doing this in a self-first way, that we're doing this with being mindful of interconnectedness. And if you are doing that, you're doing all of those things and you still get painted as the villain, then it's important for you to check in. Is there something I'm doing? Is there something that I'm doing which is harming somebody? Am I harming somebody else in this? Like, you don't go, well, I'm trying my best. I haven't done anything wrong, obviously. Like we don't go to there first. We check, we inquire, we go, okay, is this something? Have I done something? Do I owe an apology? Did I not communicate? We can go through that checklist. And if we go through that checklist and we were genuinely doing our best and we were genuinely operating with interconnectedness and we were doing things in self-first ways and we were being mindful of the other people around us and we're still being painted as the villain, sometimes we have to just accept that that's not something we can do anything about, because it's not our actions that have caused that labeling. It's the expectation and entitlement of the other person.
I think there's kind of like a sidestep to that as well. There's been times where I have done things and they didn't go over well, whether it would it wasn't the right time, it wasn't the right approach, whatever the situation it is. And I've apologized for that. And I've still been the villain because the apology wasn't XYZ. And then I tried to fix that. Okay. Still villainized. And eventually I got to the point, I'm like, it's not going to matter what I'm doing. Like, some people want to create that villain dynamic because the second they're like, you're not the villain anymore, like their shit comes up and they're like, oh, some of these might have been my mistakes. And like, they will keep perpetuating it over and over again until you step out, and then they'll still do it. Eventually though, they usually spin themselves into a tizzy and then they forget about what the situation
they usually move
was.
on to somebody else. I mean, and a lot of the time in that the reason they're villainizing in that situation, if you are genuinely trying, it's because they're in the victim approach. and they want to be in the victim approach, maybe not intentionally, maybe not consciously, but subconsciously, part of them wants to be in the victim approach, because at that point they are using their victimhood, they're weaponizing the victimhood to try to get their needs met. So they're like, so it may be that they are, it could be that they utilize it, it could be that they're weaponizing it. There's a bunch of different options here. But it's like, so for example, if I perceive that, I don't know, Bob down the street is the villain, and I come to Serena and every day I talk about how Bob has wronged me and how like terrible it is and blah blah blah, and maybe Serena gives me attention, maybe she gives me sympathy, maybe she gives me support. I mean, not how it would go down between the two of us, because we would have a different conversation about this. She's not going to feed into that if she sees me operating from that place because of the dynamic we have. But like, just like example scenario, if I'm getting my needs met by other people by having you be the villain, I need to keep you as the villain because I've got no other way of getting my needs met if I don't know how to meet them for myself. So I will, and we've seen this happen where somebody has villainized us, and then the interesting thing is somebody was villainizing somebody else while they were close with us, and I kept saying, ignore them, forget it. Like multiple people actually being like, stop putting energy into this, put your energy into your stuff. Like, what do you want to create from what you want? I didn't realize to the extent that it was happening. And then when we were then the villains, they then jumped sometimes to those same people to villainize us. And then when they burn their bridges with those people, they jump to somebody else and villainize those people. And then they jump to somebody else. And sooner or later, everyone, like, it's a small community down here. You look at it, everyone's looking at it going, I'm seeing a pattern here.
Yep.
I don't think they're the problem. And that's often what happens, because they're trying to utilize that victimhood as a means to get their needs met, maybe through the person they're villainizing, maybe through other people. And that's what they're doing, is they're using that as the thing that feeds into that, in order that they can then go, oh, look, this person's terrible to me. Please, like, feel bad for me, make me feel better about myself, yada, 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 yada. So it is really important here to like talk about impact over intention, because we talk about impact over intention. We'll put a link in the show notes to that episode if you haven't listened to it. Impact over intention is a real thing, which is that it matters more the impact that you've had to somebody than your intention. So as I talked about a little bit earlier in the episode, yes, it's really important for you to recognize that, like, so for example, if I reversed over somebody with my car, whether I meant to do it or not is not going to it's not going to minimize or mitigate the negative impact to them, like the physical, emotional harm that has been done to them from that impact. Now, if I intended to do it, yes, it would impact them even more, because then there's a case of like, okay, well, they valued me low enough to think it's so appropriate and okay for them to do that to me. So like, it's going to have more of an impact, but it doesn't mitigate the actual impact of those actions. And this is only legitimate if you have actually done harm, rather than not doing what somebody else wants you to do. So it's like, yes, impact over intention, but there has to be an impact for that to be relevant. Like, you can't just utilize that and go, well, it doesn't matter what your intention was. You caused an impact. Did I though? Did I? Or did I just not feed your needs because it's not my job to do so? And did I negatively impact them, or did I just not support them? And the thing is, yes, when you're in a close relationship, you do support each other's needs, but that's a bonus. It's not an expectation. It's not a given. And if you have done harm, you can own it. You can apologize. You can make amends. You can use that as the opportunity to repair. We did an episode a while back on like how issues in relationship are actually opportunities to get closer. And like when things go wrong, I think that Serena and I have grown closer in our relationship by the things that have gone wrong, by orders of magnitude more than by the things that have gone right. Yeah. Yeah.
So
yeah, it's
bubbly drink. I would wholeheartedly agree. That is where a lot of the growth has come from. A lot of the connection has come from the
trust, the depth.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
Not that we're saying set out to have negative things happen. It's how you handle it when it does happen, which it makes the difference.
If you set out to have negative things happen, you're negatively impacting somebody else's needs to try to get your needs met by having a closer relationship with them, which is going to negatively impact your needs, which is going to cause issues. Like, that doesn't work. That's not helpful in any way, shape, or form. And when those things come up, because if you are close with somebody, they're going to come up. Like, I can see how my relationships are going to be based on how somebody shows up when they fuck up with me. And I have people like Serena and Shrona who dive into that space and are like, okay, let's sort this out. Like, I'm sorry. Here's what I did. Here's how I address it. Here's how I make amends, blah, blah, blah. I have other people who, like, they might get a little defensive to begin with, and then they go away and think about it. And then they come back to me and like, so I've been thinking about that conversation we had, and yeah, I apologize because I see what was happening here and I hadn't realized that. And thank you for showing that to me. And that brings a level of closeness, not as close as I've got with Serena and Sharona and the people who do jump into that space, but it's certainly a very close second. And then I've got people where I bring something up to them and then poof, like they disappear like to the hills. And it's like, oh, okay. So if there's an issue, that's not going to be addressed. Okay, cool. I don't have to remove you from my life, but you're not going to be as close because go back to the relationship orbits episode. You will naturally, because the trust then gets diminished. And when the trust gets diminished, you naturally become further apart. And so it's like recognizing that when these things happen, it is an opportunity to build trust. But if you don't take that opportunity, it will erode trust like that. Mm-hmm. Like, it's so fast. It's so much easier to lose trust than it is to build it. If you've established it and you've built it over time and there's a little blip, like, that's easy to overcome. But if you haven't built trust and you do something that compromises it, it's very hard to get it back. Not impossible. It's possible, especially depending on the person involved. But it's going to take some effort. And a lot of people don't want to put that effort in. So as we've said, like, one of the things that people can do is drop into that victim approach, put you in that persecutor approach to try to get their needs. It could be either met or it could be masked. It could be like, I'm going to blame you and I'm going to make you the baddie in this situation, so I don't have to look at the things I'm doing to make my needs be compromised, so I don't have to do anything to actually fix it. So it's like, if I distract myself by making you the bad guy, I can focus all my energy on the fact that you're the bad guy and completely ignore all the shit that I'm doing that's compromising my own needs under the surface. So it's important to see the difference between these different things and see the nuance within it and say, generally speaking, if you've done something assholey, own it, make right for it, like, make it right, go through the apology blueprint, and then see where you're at. If you haven't and there's no objective harm done, at this point, you've got to start to figure out, how do you navigate this situation? Sorry, I've got the hiccups. This situation, this relationship, in such a way where you're not going to allow them to negatively impact your needs. And a lot of the time, that's just space and distance. Now, I know that you've got a bit of an interesting take on this, don't you?
Yeah, I have many interesting takes on this. But the kind of ironic one, as we were talking about this when we were doing our planning, I was like, I'm actually considered more of an asshole now than I was when I was a legitimate asshole. Like, I want to say I don't get it, but I totally get it. Knowing the needs, like, it makes complete sense to me. And I'm like, seriously? Like, a part of the notes that's not in here that I'm going to add in is, in retrospect, I'd keep a merry little band of assholes with me at all times. Like, I had my people who I could go to, and they would reinforce whatever asshole thing I was doing or saying, or like the people I could go to, they'd justify it, right? And be like, yeah, they justify it. They wouldn't judge me. They certainly wouldn't say anything to me because they didn't, like, as Claire was saying earlier, bullies be bullied. Like I was
Right.
bullied as a child and as a teenager and as a young adult and as an adult, like, and certainly more towards the younger part of my life. I was a bully as well because like it
Mm-hmm.
was me taking out my aggression and anger, and not physical, but I've always like I'd get into somebody's head pretty quickly and
Yeah,
fuck
you've got
shit
a
up.
tongue as you've got a tongue as far as that's concerned. Like you can,
Yeah.
yeah. And
I
you and I both have been in situations in our lives where we've understood how to speak to somebody in a way that like there's that kind of verbal evisceration that happens.
mm-hmm,
And it's tough. I mean, it's been a long time since both of us have been in that sort of space. But all of that was coming from our own unmet needs and
mm-hmm.
way of trying to get our needs met in the absence of knowing other ways of doing it. It doesn't justify it, doesn't make it okay, doesn't make it any less harmful, doesn't mean as we're any less culpable or that we should do any less about it. It's just understanding where it came from in order to understand what we need to do to address it. Like if you're a bully because you've got unmet needs, the solution is meet your needs, because if your
Mm-hmm.
needs are met, there's no need to do that anymore. And that doesn't mean, as I said, if you've got unmet needs, you don't get to go, oh, poor me, I've been through all this stuff and this is the reason I am the way that I am. No, if you're an adult, you have responsibility for the choices that you make around those things. There's a reason we are who we are right now, because we took those different, because we went, okay, I can see what I'm doing. That's not helpful. That's not good. Now we need to start doing things differently.
And be cautious of who you're surrounding yourself with. If you know you're being an asshole, like I had people who would back me up because they loved me, because they were in rescuer mode. Like some of them had really good intentions. Some of them were like, well, you know, if she's being an asshole to them and I'm on her side, she won't be an asshole to me. But like there's times now where I become the asshole because I won't let somebody I'm close to be an asshole. Like I'm no longer part of that merry band. Like they say something and I'm like, yeah, no, like
No.
that's not okay. Like, and it comes right back to everything is kind of done in my life with that needs lens and that lens of interconnectedness and just the concept of interconnectedness and self first. Like if I'm not harming you and like me playing into knowing something's wrong and trying to support and be like, no, it's fine because of this and this, right there, the interconnectedness, I'm harming you because I'm letting you do something that I know is harming somebody else. So then we're going to pull that web there, which is harming me because I'm allowing this to happen. It gets so messy. It's
Right.
so messy.
And it's interesting because I remember when you and I first met, you were very close with somebody who was definitely more on the asshole-ish end of the spectrum. Like
she was the queen.
And it's interesting because you dropped very easily into that kind of dynamic when you were around them. And it's very interesting because when I came along and I'm like, yeah, no, I'm not feeding that. I'm not playing into that. The interesting thing was you were very open to it. We had like, that's the reason we became close, is because we would have these conversations and I'm like, yeah, that's really not okay. Like what's happening there is really not okay. But what's really interesting is that I became the asshole in her world, because all of a sudden Serena realized it was actually more enjoyable spending time with me than it was spending time with her. And then next thing you know, I'm the asshole because I've stolen Serena away. I mean, not that that was ever said, but you could tell like that was that was what was present. And it was so interesting because I'm like, I mean, like if you're going to label me an asshole for not being an asshole, I'm okay with that.
Right. Because you won't feed into my bullshit and like,
yeah. And I'm like, and I didn't realize it because she was somebody I knew as well. And I didn't realize it when we first met. And there was a side to her that was really fun. And we used to have great conversations and everything. And then I started to see more of that coming out. And I'm like, oh, yeah.
And then don't you know, she turned on me too. Shocker.
Well, there's a yes. I'm like, consider my curls well and truly clutched, my pearls well and truly clutched.
You clutch your curls too, but
but it's like, it's interesting because like I've seen you over this journey. You've let go of this kind of the people pleaser stuff that was in you. It's interesting because like it was like being somebody who was like dealt in kind of somewhat asshole-ish behavior and also being a people pleaser at the same time. But it's like people pleasers, the people who are more asshole-ish, but not to the people. It's really messy. Like it's really fucked up.
Yeah, don't go down that. Like I'm starting to think of that, and I'm like, yeah.
But also, I think part of the reason you're considered an asshole now more than you were way back then and way beyond is because you set boundaries now. People don't like people who set boundaries if the boundaries conflict with what they want them to do. And that's the reason, like, you're not gonna, like, if you want me to do something that benefits you and costs me, that's not gonna happen. But because I set the boundary, I'm the issue.
Especially to the people who knew me as the people pleaser. Like,
yeah, absolutely.
I turned some heads when those boundaries came in, because you know I like 3 of them right in a row. Boundaries. Like they were like, excuse me, what is this? I'm like,
right. Well, and I think
right
one of the other things that I think is really important about how you've shifted is you do what's right now, even when it's uncomfortable or unpopular. Like you'll call out behavior.
Yep.
And again, people don't like that because they don't want to be faced with their own shitty behavior. Yeah.
Yeah. Because the thing is, like I've said it before, I used to consider myself like a guy's girl. Like I could hang with the guys, like you're not gonna offend me, all of this other stuff. And I realized
these days that's called a pick me. Yeah. Just one of the guys, I'm not like the other girls kind of thing. Yeah.
No, I was so indoctrinated into that culture of, you know, oh, they can say whatever they want, however they want. Like, nope, I shouldn't say anything, or that makes me the bitch, or makes me one of those girls, or whatever it
not
is.
Cool, or if I'm gonna call
and I
out
mean, there's many instances in my life that this applies to, but it's that really makes me like think back into when like I just let things go. It didn't matter about the interconnectedness. It didn't matter that it was impacting my needs. Half the time I didn't even know it was impacting my needs because I was part of the joke. Like, but I was, in retrospect, I was part of the joke because yeah, it was the butt of it, not as the gallery for it, which it takes a while to get past that and be like, like there's some friendships that have just had to separate because I'm like, it's not the same anymore. Like I've just grown in a different direction. I've learned things. I'm just not okay with these kind of dynamics. And then it's like, oh, well, she's become a bitch in her older age. Like, yeah, I guess so. Right. Like, fine.
Right. If doing the right thing and taking care of myself.
Oh, no, it's empty. Like, sorry.
Right. And it's like, if that, and that's the thing is that, yeah, it's okay to have your feelings about it. Like, it's okay to process. Like if someone who like you think knows you well, all of a sudden paints you an asshole for just doing the right thing or for setting a boundary, it's okay to have feelings about like that. That's important to process them and meet your own needs that have been compromised through that, to support yourself through that. It also doesn't make it true. And it's like, this is the thing, is like we have to look at, just because it's true doesn't mean we don't have feelings. Just because it's not true doesn't mean to say we don't have feelings about it. So like all of these things can be true. And the good thing is, like, once you've got this toolkit of like, I know what my needs are, I know how to meet them, I can see when they're being compromised by different situations, you can be like, okay, here's this thing, and it's this need, and it's this need, and it's this need. Okay, I'm going to meet those needs. I have feelings about it. So that's my emotional experience expression need. I got to go process that so I can feel how I feel about the things that are being said right now. Like it's all okay to have those feelings and process it. And it's also important to recognize and label these things as untrue. Like to be able to name that's not the reality of what's going on here. And I don't know, you're never going to know exactly what's going through somebody's mind, why they're doing the things, what their motivation is, what their unmet needs are in terms of saying and what have you. But it's really important for you to recognize and be able to name, this is not me harming somebody else. And you don't need to say it to them necessarily, just to yourself. I'm not negatively harming somebody else by setting a boundary. I'm not negatively impacting somebody else by not meeting their needs as a priority over mine. I'm not an asshole for saying no. Like that's ultimately a lot of the time what this boils down to is like, we are expected to say yes. And when we say no, we're the asshole. And it's like, no, that's not how that works. And a lot of the time people will label people as assholes who won't play their game the way they want it to be played, the way they want to play it. They will label people assholes who can't be manipulated. It's one of the reasons that I get labeled and I get villainized as much as I do, because I can see through the game. I'm like, I see the game that's being played here. I don't want to play that game. Like, I can see how you're trying to manipulate me. Like, there was somebody I was had a situation with years ago, and I could see every manipulation they were trying to make, and I just sat there and I was like, okay. And like, as somebody who, like, if you know me well, I'm a chatty person. I'm going to talk to anybody. And literally I spent probably 80% of my time in this person's company, literally just saying, okay, I wasn't going to fight them on it, but I'm not going to feed it. And I'm like, I can see what's going on here. And there's part of my brain going, we can pretend that's true if that's what you want to believe right now, because I know that's not true, but I'm also not going to argue with you about it because it's really not worth my time or energy. Mm-hmm. Okay. And I sat around for a couple of experiences like that. And then I went, nope, I'm out. Exited stage left and didn't put myself in that situation anymore. I have no doubt in my mind I was the asshole in that person's mind. None whatsoever. Because I wouldn't, there was a lot of baiting that was happening. I'm like, I'm doing this to try and bait you into doing this. I'm doing this to try and get this reaction. I'm doing this to try to get you to say this. I'm doing this to try and get you to admit that. I'm doing this to try to get you to admit what your fears are. I'm trying to get like I could see, I mean, it was like, pew, pew, pew. I felt like I was like in the Matrix. I'm like, oh, like trying to avoid all of the things that are being flung in my direction. But if you don't take those, if you don't respond to those, especially if it's somebody who's used to manipulating other people and used to being able to pull strings and have people do what they want them to do, they come across somebody who doesn't do that. Oh, they're the arsehole because they're not playing this game. And if you are somebody who can see what they're doing, even more of an arsehole, because I'm like, I can see, like, people don't like to be seen. They like, which, I mean, don't hang out with me if you don't want to be seen. It's just that simple. I had drinks with somebody a while back. And I asked, we were like, it was early on in our friendship, and we were like asking questions to get to know each other. And I remember I asked this question and they were like, what do you mean by that? And then I expanded on the question. We were sat at a bar and they took a long drink and put their drink down and went, so nobody told me you were a witch. I was like, well, I don't know why. I think it's common knowledge by this point. But it's like, I'm going to see you, so I'm going to ask questions that are relevant to what I'm seeing, which gives away that I see you. And some people, like, I will only do that with people where I'm actually trying to get to know them better. There's a lot of times when I see people, I'm like, oh, I'm not going anywhere near that topic because that's a landmine waiting to blow up in my face, and I don't want to do that right now. But if you are seeing people, you're able to see people, especially when you see their needs. Like if you can see, oh, value needs talking to me, personal power needs talking to me, security is talking to me. Like when you can see that, which it's hard not to be able to see that when you do what we do, that makes people want to push you away even more, because they go, oh, hold on a second. This person can see all of the things that I don't even want to admit about myself. And so if they can see that, then it makes them a threat to me. And because I perceive them as a threat, because they can see the things I don't even want to admit about myself, they're the bad guy. And you mess all those things together, oh, it makes for a pretty little concoction. I can tell you that much. It's purple and green.
Yes.
And the thing I'll say about all of this is that I know we always say that the meeting of your needs is the answer. If you haven't picked that up in over 200 episodes, go back and listen again. Like, you missed something. It really is. Like, it just is. Because the more that your needs are met, the more it doesn't matter if somebody villainizes you. The more your needs are met and the more you're able to meet your needs, the more you can respond when somebody villainizes you in a way. Because, like, there have been multiple times where there's a lot of shit talked about me about town that was completely untrue. I keep whacking my microphone today. Obviously, I'm in my villain era, so I'm using my hands more than usual. And there have been times when part of me is like, I kind of want to address what's going on, because that's not true. And now people are thinking these things are true of me, which are absolutely not. But I also knew what was true was that the best way of dealing with these situations is to starve it of oxygen. So the more attention you give it, the more time and energy you give it, the more it's going to feed it. And so if you want these things to kind of taper out or to lose momentum, you need to starve it of attention. You need to show that it's not affecting you. You need to show that, and that's not to say that it isn't affecting you, but you go meet your needs so that when you're there, it's not affecting you, because your needs are still met, even if they might have been compromised at one point, and then you need to re-meet them yourself. And the interesting thing is, in every single one of these situations, especially here locally, things are good now. Like, there's one situation in which things are now civil in a way, and that's all I really wanted, was like, let's get back to civil. We don't need to be friends, but I'm not doing anything to harm you. Let's not do anything to harm me, and let's just coexist here in relative harmony. There's another situation where someone tried to go scorched earth, and I think they actually scorched the earth under themselves in the process. And I haven't seen them in a while. I don't even know if they're still here. I'm like, the staying solid in myself, staying rooted in meeting my needs and supporting myself in this process, and not allowing being called the villain to pull me into either acting like the villain or compromising the boundaries or the things that were right for me in order to be perceived not as the villain, actually has meant that I'm now in a better place now than I ever have been before. And it's through that being rooted in my needs is the thing that has acted as the anchor that has got me through these situations. And now, as I said, I'm in a situation now where I'm like, okay, cool. Like, those situations aren't benefiting me. They're not costing me. They just sort of are. And now we get to move on and just, and it doesn't mean say that process is easy when it's happening. And you do need to, it is helpful to have people who can support you, who you can vent to, who you can process with, and who can support you and to continually remind you to take care of your needs, because that's what's going to get you through. And even in those moments where it doesn't feel true, as somebody who's been there multiple times, I just want to reassure you that it is, and you will get through it. And taking care of your needs is the best way to get through.
Oh shit, it really is that simple.
You're early.
Too early.
That's coming in a little bit. Yeah. Anything else you want to add before we finish up?
I think I'm good.
Awesome. Well, thank you for being here and witnessing us in our villain era. It's a lot of fun, I got to tell you. It's like, it's far more fun being in this place and being okay with being perceived as the villain, but doing what's right for you and around the people around you, than it ever is being worried about being labeled that. I can definitely attest to that. And besides which, purple and green are our colors. So, thank you for being here. Thank you for watching. Thank you for listening. We'll be back next week with another episode. But between now and then, remember to stay safe, take care of yourself, and continue to meet your own needs. Lots of love. Bye.
Bye, friends.
That's it for today.
If you like what you heard,
and would like to see some of Serena's awesome facial expressions,
check out the video podcast on YouTube.
And remember, as long as you're doing life being self first and being aware of interconnectedness and operating from that place, even if somebody else says that you're the villain in the story, doesn't necessarily mean it's true.
Well, shit. It really is that simple.